Welcome to the deep dive. You know when you watch global conflicts on the news, you see the headlines.
Right.
Boots on the ground, missile strikes, troop movements.
All kinetic stuff.
Exactly. But those visible actions, they're really only half the story. The real battle, I think, the one that shapes those long-term geopolitical outcomes, often takes place far away from the front lines.
In courtrooms.
In courtrooms, diplomatic chambers, even in legal texts.
Which is why today we're talking about lawfare.
Right. Today, we are deep diving into the strategy of lawfare.
It's a term that's become absolutely central to modern strategy.
So what is it exactly?
Lawfare, simply put, is the fusion of legal strategy with military and political objectives. It's using law not just as a rule book,
But as a tool.
as a genuine instrument of power. It can be a weapon, a shield, and a battlefield all at the same time.
And the sources we've looked at for you, they really lay out how this exploitation has become so consequential in the 21st century.
Incredibly so.
So our mission today is to understand the mechanics of it. You know, where and how does this strategic exploitation happen? And what does it all mean for global stability and military conduct?
We want you to walk away seeing that lawfare is what often determines who is judged as the aggressor.
And who's the victim?
Right. And that can be completely separate from who actually fired the first shot.
That's the core of it.
Yeah.
Lawfare might not physically destroy a bridge.
No, but it can paralyze a government's ability to fund its military. It can delegitimize its actions on the world stage, or just bog it down in years of costly legal defense.
It shapes the entire environment.
The entire environment in which conflict happens.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with why this is such a modern thing. I mean, before the 20th century, international war was... It was governed by custom, right?
And those customs were often ignored if a nation was strong enough, made right, essentially.
That all changed.
It changed fundamentally after the global trauma of the world wars. The major powers decided to formalize the international legal system.
And that gave us things like the UN Charter, the Geneva Conventions.
All the cornerstones, sovereignty, non-aggression. And these constraints, which were designed to reduce suffering, paradoxically created this massive new vulnerability.
Or opportunity.
Or opportunity, depending on your perspective, exactly.
Because once law becomes central to legitimacy...
Then manipulating it, or even just adhering to it, becomes a strategic tool in itself.
Which means you can be, technically winning a fight on the ground.
But losing the legal narrative globally. And in today's world, that might be the more important loss.
Why today specifically?
Well, lawfare thrives in this deeply interconnected world. Every military action is judged instantly by a global audience.
Right.
And it's not just judged on tactical success, but on how it's framed legally and morally.
So states pour immense resources into constructing these legal justifications.
They do, citing treaty obligations, self-defense clauses, humanitarian intervention, even when those justifications might seem a little thin.
And the existence of that justification, no matter how shaky, that's the point. It's like a permission slip.
It absolutely is. It dictates the international reaction. It's how allies might maintain support or how neutral nations hesitate to condemn.
You can paralyze institutions like the UN Security Council.
Totally. That legal ambiguity can be just as decisive as any physical victory.
Okay, so there's a dual nature to this. You've got offensive versus defensive lawfare.
Right.
The defensive side seems pretty clear. It's about protecting your own actions, your soldiers.
Your state, yeah. Protecting them from international condemnation or prosecution. It's the shield.
But the offensive side, that's more subtle, isn't it?
It's more subtle, but extremely powerful. This is where you actively use legal instruments to constrain an adversary, to delegitimize them, to weaken them.
So what does that look like?
We're talking about filing legal challenges against their sanctions, initiating international inquiries, or maybe challenging the validity of a treaty that their whole position relies on.
And so the international institutions themselves, the courts, the tribunals, they become the new arenas.
The conflict just continues there, by other means.
Which brings up a critical insight from the sources. For a lot of these strategists, the process is the point.
The process is everything, regardless of the eventual verdict.
Why?
Think about the resource drain. A single claim, maybe brought by a state proxy or some advocacy group, can generate tens of thousands of pages of discovery.
Millions of dollars in legal fees.
And it ties up dozens of high-level government officials for years. That is a massive distraction. It's a depletion of strategic resources, even if the case ultimately fails.
So it's a form of strategic warfare waged through bureaucracy.
Through paperwork. It's the long game.
And it's especially useful for smaller states, right? It's a great equalizer.
It's a huge equalizer. It offers a powerful way to challenge a stronger nation without ever risking a direct military exchange.
You weaponize their own commitment to the rule of law against them.
That's it, exactly.
Okay, let's pivot now, because this relationship between law and the military has profoundly changed how conflict is actually waged, the physical part.
This is where it gets really interesting. Law is no longer something that just judges warfare after the fact.
It's embedded within the battlefield.
Deeply embedded.
Our sources detail this incredible shift where legal advisors now sit right alongside military commanders,
Sometimes even on the tactical ground level.
advising in real time on targeting, detention, interrogation.
The rules of engagement, what they call the ROE, are now shaped as much by legal risk as they are by military necessity.
So a commander is constantly balancing.
Constantly. Balancing the need to achieve an objective against the possibility of, international condemnation, war crimes, tribunals, or even just domestic lawsuits years later.
It demands a level of self-restraint that just didn't exist a century ago.
Huge level.
But wait, if you're adhering so strictly to these legal constraints, doesn't that handicap you? Doesn't it create an asymmetry?
It absolutely does. And this is the paradox of compliance that is so critical for you to understand.
Okay.
States with disciplined professional militaries constrain themselves. They meticulously adhere to the law of armed conflict.
Even if it means giving up a tactical advantage.
Right. While, on the other hand, their adversaries, non-state actors, insurgent groups, terrorists, they exploit this.
They disregard international law.
Completely. They embed themselves in civilian populations. They intentionally provoke responses that will cause collateral damage.
Because the core paradox here is that your own adherence to the law
Can be weaponized against you.
Right.
Non-state actors turn your compliance into their vulnerability. They use the resulting civilian harm not for a tactical gain.
No, but for legal and informational lawfare.
Exactly. To mobilize international opinion, to call for investigations that tie up that disciplined military. They are willing to trade a tactical loss for a strategic win in the legitimacy battle.
That just shifts the entire moral and strategic landscape of conflict.
It does.
It's jarring to realize that the rules meant to protect people can be used as a shield for those who break them.
And lawfare isn't just about troop movements. It applies heavily to fixed physical spaces.
Like territorial and maritime disputes.
Especially there.
If you look at territorial disputes, control isn't just about planting a flag anymore.
No, it's about the ability to assert lawful authority.
Which is where lawfare requires all this meticulous preparation.
States marshal every legal document they can find. Old treaties, historical claims, detailed maps, new domestic legislation.
They'll design infrastructure projects or administrative acts just to strengthen a legal claim.
A claim that they can then submit to an international body.
The law of the sea is a great example of this. It governs these huge resource-rich areas.
And the smallest change in legal interpretation can mean billions in revenue or a critical strategic advantage.
It's basically a massive, ongoing zoning debate.
That's a great way to put it. And every patrol path, every buoy they commission, every research vessel is a kind of legal submission.
And their patrols are calibrated to stay just below the threshold of armed conflict.
That's the gray zone we hear so much about. Their actions are all designed to reinforce a legal position. The moment a patrol crosses that line.
The whole strategic position can shift.
And lawfare is what defines exactly where that line is.
So if Lawfare defines physical territory, it must also define the mental territory, the battle for perception.
Absolutely. Which takes us into the blurring lines of modern conflict.
Right.
Legal arguments are rarely made just for a judge anymore. They're crafted for the global audience.
Governments issue white papers, legal memos, public statements, all saturated with legal language.
They do that to frame their actions as justifiable and lawful.
And that legal language, it lends an instant credibility that a purely political statement just doesn't have.
It accelerates the whole battle for perception, and this is central to the rise of what we call hybrid warfare.
Can you define hybrid warfare for us?
It's the combination of military force with other tools. Informational, economic, political, and it relies heavily on lawfare to operate in those ambiguous gray zones.
So what's a gray zone exactly?
A gray zone is an area of strategic competition that falls below the threshold of what we'd call traditional armed conflict. But it's clearly more aggressive than just normal peacetime competition.
And lawfare is the key tool.
It's essential because the actions are specifically designed to exploit legal loopholes to maintain plausible deniability.
So using militias without clear insignia.
Or mobilizing proxy forces that are technically separate from the state military.
Or even engineering domestic legal reforms, like a contested referendum, to change facts on the ground.
All of those are lawfare maneuvers. They're intended to keep the conflict in the legal shadows.
And international law, which is built on these clear distinctions between war and peace, just struggles to respond.
It struggles immensely. And that very struggle, the confusion, the debate over how to classify these actions, that becomes the strategic objective.
And nothing exploits those ambiguities like cyber warfare.
Nothing. The digital space just completely blurs the line between a minor crime and a major act of war.
Because existing legal frameworks are so challenged by attacks that cause massive disruption without physical destruction.
Right. And states are intensely engaged in lawfare right now to shape the interpretations of what counts as an armed attack in cyberspace.
How are they doing that? Is it just formal demands?
Oh, it's highly technical, deeply strategic. They're funding think tanks, releasing legal position papers. Many of them reference frameworks like the Talon Manual on Cyber Warfare.
And they're doing this to assert their preferred interpretations.
They want to define the rules of attribution. How do you prove a state sponsored an attack when a proxy hacker group was involved?
And the difficulty of proving that attribution creates the strategic ambiguity they can exploit.
It's their greatest weapon.
Let's touch on the economic front too, because sanctions are basically lawfare in action.
They're entirely reliant on legal instruments, yes. Sanctions regimes use domestic and international financial mechanisms to restrict trade and finance. They're framed as the alternative to military force.
So the lawfare element is twofold. The sanctioning power uses law to legitimize the coercion.
And the targeted state uses lawfare to resist it. They'll challenge the legality of sanctions in international forums, file WTO disputes, create counter-narratives of illegal economic aggression.
Okay, let's turn to the practical implications. For military leaders, for soldiers, lawfare creates this intense dual reality.
It does. On one hand, legal rules provide limits, but they also enforce high standards of professionalism. They provide a moral grounding.
A military trained in the law of armed conflict is inherently more disciplined.
And less likely to engage in abuses that might undermine long-term strategic goals.
But the downside, as the sources note, is very real. The fear of legal consequences, of being prosecuted years later.
It can lead to risk aversion. Commanders might hesitate in critical moments. They might prioritize legal safety over military necessity. That tension is a whole new facet of modern command.
And for policymakers back in the Capitol,
lawfare demands extreme strategic foresight. The justifications they use today, the precedents they set, will be invoked by future adversaries.
So you're not just defending your action in the moment.
You are contributing to the international legal order. You are shaping the rules of the game for the next generation.
This raises a huge issue, though, when law is used purely instrumentally, just as a weapon.
You risk eroding its foundational moral purpose.
That's the critical ethical challenge.
It is. The integrity of those legal norms has to be preserved through vigilance, through transparency. Because if every powerful state just asserts that its actions are lawful, regardless of objective analysis,
then the law stops being a constraint.
And becomes merely a justification. And the outcome of that is, well, a return toward unrestrained violence.
Looking ahead, the future of lawfare seems like it will be shaped drastically by technology.
Autonomous weapons, AI, space systems. These raise questions our existing legal framework, which is built around human accountability, simply cannot answer.
Think about responsibility. If an algorithm makes a split-second targeting decision that results in civilian casualties, who is responsible?
The operator, the programmer, the commander, the state that bought the system.
And what about proportionality? How do you apply that concept that the military advantage must outweigh collateral damage to a machine-driven conflict?
And we know states aren't waiting for the international community to figure this out.
They are already engaging in proactive lawfare.
They are. They are promoting legal interpretations that specifically favor their technological advantages. They want the law to be flexible enough to accommodate their new AI capabilities, for example.
This race to define the legal norms for new tech is one of the most critical fronts of lawfare today.
It really is.
So what does this all mean for you, for listener trying to understand how the world operates.
It means you have to abandon this dangerous assumption that strategy and law operate in separate silos.
They don't.
Effective lawfare requires interdisciplinary thinking. It's sharp legal analysis combined with deep geopolitical and military insight. Modern power operates across all these domains at once.
So if you ignore the legal battle,
You risk strategic failure, even if you achieve a tactical success on the ground.
that's a powerful way to synthesize it. The central truth here is that warfare and lawfare are really just two sides of the same coin.
Force creates facts, but law seeks to define their meaning. Power shapes the rules, but rules in turn shape power.
And recognizing these dynamics allows you to see conflicts more clearly, to judge actions more critically.
And to anticipate future challenges, you have to look beyond the physical battlefield to understand the real struggle, which is the struggle for legitimacy.
And that struggle is happening in legal texts, diplomatic chambers, and institutional processes. It's a silent war that sets precedents for everyone.
It is. So we'll leave you with a provocative thought to consider. Will legal institutions, which were built largely around the 20th century nation-state model, adapt quickly enough to the rapid pace of technological innovation and geopolitical shifts?
Or will the struggle to update international law simply become the most critical and the most exploited front line of the conflicts to come?
Thank you for joining us on this Strategic Vanguard podcast. If you found value in this analysis, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. We bring you fresh podcasts every Monday here on YouTube and Rumble, and you can also catch the audio versions on Spotify and Amazon Music. Just search for Strategic Vanguard Podcast. For more insights, articles, and discussions, subscribe to our blog at strategicvanguard.com. Your support helps us grow and bring you more in-depth analysis on defense, geopolitics, and strategy. Until next time, stay informed, stay strategic.